Good evening. I'm Randy Speck. I'm chair of ANC 34G. I represent an area that's essentially bounded between Nebraska and Utah and Broadprint. It's ANC 3G03. And this is a special meeting of the ANC tonight to address some issues related to the community center and the modernization of the community center to help us do that. Introduce the other commissioners. Abe, you want to start?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Hello, everyone. My name is Abraham Clayman. I represent ANC 34G01, which is Hawthorne and part of Barnaby Woods.
Hi, I'm Jerry Mallett. I represent 3G05 from about Chevy Chase Circle down to Military and across to Broad Branch.
Chris Frombaluti, 3G07, between Military and Nebraska, on the other side of Connecticut.
Okay, we do have 4 commissioners here. We can actually have a quorum. I don't think we're going to take any official action tonight, but nevertheless we have a quorum. This is the second of the meetings that we've had on the modernization of the community center after we got the budget to go forward with the project. And we have $19 million. It's spread over 3 years to construct a new building here or modernize this building, whatever ultimately the architects decide is the best way to do it, so long as they achieve all of the objectives that we've set out in our report, which we issued last January. At the last meeting on September 17th, we discussed 2 broad issues. The first was the design of the building and how it would be, how it would accommodate the programs and the activities that we expect to go on at the community center, and how it would address all of the issues that we raised in our report. That process is going to be handled through the DPR, at least initially. They'll be working with the Department of General Services. And DPR and DGS are supposedly in the process now of preparing a request for proposal, which I think will be issued relatively soon if they keep to the timetable that they described to us. Brent Cisco was here from DPR and explained the process to us, and at least on paper it sounds like they're going to do a good job of cooperating with us during this design phase. But right now there's not very much we can do in that process. They've got to issue the request for proposal to get a design contractor, which is basically an architect, to do the work. They're hoping to issue that request for proposal very soon, during October. They would expect then about 6 weeks to 8 weeks after that, the proposals would be submitted, and then they'd make a selection around the first of the year. And that would mean that there would be another set of meetings here with us to talk about our expectations for the community center with the new design contractor. So all of that process is really going to have to go on hold for the moment until we have a design contractor. The second topic that we discussed at our last meeting was how we accommodate all of the current programs at the community center. How are we going to make sure that those programs have a space and an adequate space to continue during the construction, which we don't expect to start until 2020. But we need to be prepared for that. It's going to take a substantial amount of time to make arrangements for other places. Plus, one thing that we identified at our last meeting was that there may be some costs associated with that. And if so, we need to get the money in DPR's budget so that they will not plead lack of funds when we say in 2020 and construction starts that we have to have additional space that's going to cost them some money. So that's the process that we initiated last meeting. Abe and Jerry are taking the lead on that from the commission's standpoint. And so I'm going to really turn it over to Abe. I think you're going to lead the discussion tonight to talk about the first steps we've been taking. Just in terms of the timetable, though, what I would like to see is because we have to get into the budget cycle, to get into the budget for fiscal year 2020, that budget cycle is beginning right now, and we would have to have something, I think, to the mayor and to her budget staff by the end of the year if we really expect to get money included in the mayor's proposed budget. So that's sort of the time frame I think we need to be thinking about for a presentation or some kind of request to the mayor to include this in her budget. So Abe, you want to take it over?
Sure. Thank you. First, can everyone hear me? Yes? Okay. Just want to make sure. If you can't hear me, just raise your hand and I'll speak a little louder. Okay, like I said, my name is Abraham Clayman, and I'm the Commissioner for ANC 34G01, and Commissioner Mallitz and I have taken the lead, as Randy said, on the programming piece about what to do with programs that are currently at the Chevy Chase Community Center that may or that will need to be moved to other places or in other situations. And so I think tonight I want to just take a few minutes to talk about what maybe folks who are here should expect. I see a lot of folks here who are associated with those programs. Take a few minutes to better understand the needs of those programs, and then if there's other questions about what to expect program-wise, we'll have a little time for that too. So I think first, right now, Commissioner Mallitz and I, many of you have gotten a survey about what your program needs, and we've seen about a dozen people or a dozen programs fill out information about what their program would need when this site is not available for that program. And we're still doing that. We want to make sure we fully understand what the different programs are, what kind of space they need, number of people that participate, need any special materials, or any costs associated with transitioning them to another space. Once we have a complete understanding of that, and really kind of as we gather that understanding, we would like to help those programs or programs do some outreach to other spaces, whether it's other community centers, senior centers, libraries, or other facilities where programs could be housed. And then, like Commissioner Speck said, we want to make sure that we're being really clear with the mayor about any sort of funds or special requests that we would need to be making. And we want to be doing that over the next few months so that we're getting into the budget process for 2020. I think we don't want to overpromise. We don't want to say that every program will look exactly the same or will be in this space as convenient to the space it is currently in. That would be unrealistic. But we do want to do our best to make sure that whatever programs are here, to the extent possible, are at some reasonable space relatively close by without a major change. That's what we're going for. Does that sound? Okay, sounds, we're in agreement about that? Okay, all right. And then in terms of tonight, I think what I'd like to do is just hear from the folks who represent the various programs that are here, make sure we fully understand your needs, and then take questions. Yeah, jump in, please.
I just wanted to give a little background on the survey itself that we put together. So the survey, as those of you who have already filled it out, or those that have just looked at it without completing it yet, it's 10 questions long. If you're wondering why it's 10 questions, because that's what we're allowed to do with a free subscription to Question Pro. So that's why some of the questions are multi-layered, so we could keep it within that 10. And also we wanted to make it something that people could respond to and not worry that it's going to take a long time. So far, the 12 responses we've gotten have averaged 4 or 5 minutes per response.
Have you all contacted the Y that's conducting a lot of these and asked them, because they have a lot of the information about how many people are in those classes and how many people are in this place?
Okay, I'll get to that because that was the next thing. So we sent out requests to about 18 different email addresses so far. Those were the names that we were given at the last meeting and names that people have supplied us that needed to be added. We're also still acquiring other names to add to the list. and that's one of them that we've heard already, so we will be adding that. And anybody else that I'm sure Commissioner Clayman is going to tell you who has responded to us so far, so I don't want to jump ahead of that, but we do want to make sure that everybody has a chance to respond, and we're also keeping track of the programs because we don't want more than one person responding for a program. We want to have a definitive response per program. So we're able to get that so far, but we do know that there are a lot of programs that we haven't heard from yet. For instance, photography, dance, not counting ballet, art, not counting ceramics, music, gymnastics. So we still have some big players out there that we have to hear from. And like I said, we're acquiring email addresses. Some that we've gotten didn't seem to be the right ones. So this isn't a process that needs to end within the next week or so. We have time to get all of this in. It just started exactly 1 week ago. We have 12 responses, which is a pretty good start for 1 week. And I would expect within the next few weeks, we'll have that number up greatly.
Jerry, just one question about summer programs. Is that on your radar at all? Because I know the community center is used very extensively during the summer for daycare or day camp kinds of programs.
We've talked about that. We don't have a way to address that yet because of outdoor needs as opposed to indoor needs. So that's something that might need to be a specialized investigation as to what we need in terms of outdoor program space.
Yeah. Okay. So is anyone here from the telescope making workshop or the telescope making club? National Capital Astronomers Amateur Telescope Making Workshop. Okay. Is anyone here from the Seniors Fitness Program? So Senior Fitness Program. Great. Okay. Ding, ding, ding. All right. So I just want to make sure, according to the survey,
Is the person who completed that survey here? Did you complete the survey?
Who's not running the program?
Sure.
No. Who's running the program? Okay. So nobody here completed the survey for that program. That's what you're really asking.
well,
The seniors exercise or the seniors?
Strength and fitness for
Completed it twice.
you did complete it. Okay, we did get two. Yes. Okay.
And in fact, there are several names for that program.
Right. We either have strength and fitness for seniors or the Chevy Chase Seniors Program. Those are the two that we have there.
Because there are several parts to it. There is chair aerobics.
Right.
There is fit and well. There is another one.
Tai Chi.
I guess I haven't.
What's that thing that's Pilates?
Pilates and Tai Chi.
Yeah, but
Right.
what's the thing that?
Many of them are staffed, I think, by the YMCA.
Right.
I think it would be wise to get a hold of the people who are in charge of those programs.
Is Brittany the one who's in charge of all of them overall?
Yeah, but she doesn't know very much about
She's the coordinator here, but Will Yates is the one who's kind of oversees it. Brittany is the person who is here coordinating all variety of those programs, but Will Yates is the one who's been managing.
He's from
With
the
the Y.
He's from the Y.
He's with
She's
the
employed by
Y.
the
Yeah.
Y.
Do you need his email, Randy?
Yeah, my understanding that we actually already emailed him, william.yates@ymca.org. Yeah, we actually already reached out to him. I don't believe that we got a response.
You
Yeah.
had me on the email address, but I didn't get it from you. I got it from Randy. It did not come through. Maybe it went into my spam folder. I don't know.
Right.
Ted, I thought was on the email list also, and he didn't. He wasn't originally.
No. The original email went up from Jerry on Wednesday the 10th that did include Williams. You're saying that went to...
It had my name,
Yeah.
my address on it. but I didn't get it. I got it today from Randy and filled it out.
I mean, it sounds like he's someone we should definitely make sure we're talking to.
Absolutely.
Right.
Do you have William Yates and YMCA?
Yeah. Yeah, that's who he emailed. Yeah.
Your phone number too?
You know, it doesn't say here his phone number, but I read his phone number. It should be in there.
I think
Okay, but
we can probably track him down.
Brittany does teach 5 classes and she's with DPR, so I would have.
She did respond for the Chevy Chase Seniors Program. Yeah, she did. In terms of what would be needed, she did fill out the survey as well. So we definitely have a number of seniors programs. We did have Tai Chi, fitness, I think 2 different fitness programs. We did not get a Zoom, something filled out for Zumba though, so I think we can reach out.
She teaches the Zumba also.
Okay. Make sure we're talking to her. Zumba, and she does Zumba and Pilates. Yeah. There's a lot
You
of.
have Liz Walters? Yes. And dance? Yes. And ballet? Yes.
Yep,
Ballet? She completed it.
she did. Okay. So I think in terms of the variety of seniors programs, we want to make sure we're talking to Will Yates and Brittany Miller to make sure that they've completed it for everything. It sounds like they've completed it for some, but not maybe every program. All right.
Just want to tell them all the programs we did here.
Sure. We did hear from a number of programs. We heard from, like I said, telescope making, fencing, Tai Chi, strength and fitness for seniors, pottery and ceramics, ballet, and another senior program, hold on again, pottery, again, resistance and cardio, the bridge club, and the Scrabble club.
Resistance and cardio is also called fit and well.
Okay, got it. Fit and well senior program. Got it. There's a number of the nomenclature we're still kind of trying to tackle. Okay.
That's what they wrote.
Oh, okay. Just not what came up here. Got it. Okay. Are there any other representatives of any programs that are here that have not been mentioned so far? Anyone come here looking for their program to get on the list? No? Okay. Great. Okay. Well, that's good. Okay.
Excuse me, you mentioned Scrabble, which I'm associated with, but Samantha and I both also represent the Chevy Chase Citizens Association.
yes.
Did you mention that?
No, you didn't mention that at all.
I mean, I don't know if you, I mean, we're also for the debates here, so.
We have our monthly meetings here.
Okay.
We have our executive meetings here.
Okay. We did. That was not. That's a good point. Did not.
I guess we should send it to your president.
Yeah.
Complete that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's Catherine
Right.
Barnes. developer.
And there might be another one that's very simply overlooked, that is voting. It's a key, you know.
That's not,
Yeah.
I'm gonna get up to us.
That
Well,
may-
I know, but you gotta take it into account.
I do wonder whether the eventual product of this is similar to our report for Chevy Chase Community Center involved in some sort of report to the mayor that says these are the things we need in terms of programming, these are the things we need in terms of budget, these are some things to consider that while we don't have direct control over, we think are important, not for data, like voting, for example.
It is a polling location.
It is, it certainly is. Okay. Let's see, Cape March, CCCA. Okay. I think, to my knowledge, there are not other programs here then that we need to discuss, other than I do want to have a couple questions for our fencing program. I don't want to create a hierarchy here, but in terms of specialization, it does seem like in terms of equipment and needs, that the fencing program is sort of in a different category, just to be honest. We've gotten a very detailed list of what is required and what is needed. And I just want to make sure that, I just want to really give you an opportunity if there are things that you want to make sure are highlighted here. I have read your recommendations, but if there's something that you want to highlight or take a minute to share them. Sure.
Well, I don't know that I have to go through the list you sent you already,
Right.
but we do have space requirements, and that would be high ceiling. We don't want to be able to reach the ceiling when we're holding the swords up in the air. And the fencing strips themselves are 60 feet long, so we need a large space to accommodate this practice for. I think the biggest concern amongst the list I sent you is the storage has to be secure. And the equipment that we have upstairs is expensive. It has to be kept locked, and it's going to be difficult to move the cabinet. I helped to construct their wooden cabinet there about 35 years ago. And it's held up very well, and but it's large, and it's going to be difficult to move without just possibly dismantling it. And our rubber mats that we use for good footing, they each weigh 50 pounds or so each, I think. So they're difficult to transport to another facility. So we need some sort of rental van or moving company to help with doing all that. And then once we get to the new facility, we won't have an overhead wiring system for our scoring machines available at a new facility. So then we have to set up floor cables and reels to keep the wires away from the fencers' feet as they move up and down the strip. And so I estimate to be another $3,200 expense.
So for that number, is that for the floor reels or only, or is that for the floor reels and assuming new storage, the 3,200?
No, that's just for the floor reels and the cords that connect it to the scoring machine.
Okay.
You know, I just went to one of the websites of the manufacturers.
Got it. Okay. I just wanted to clarify. Okay. Got it.
And,
all right.
You know, it would be nice to have the AED available to us.
Sure.
Not that we've needed it in the past, but
right.
You never know. The first aid supplies and items, parking lot security. The electrical outlets for the scoring machines.
Okay.
But it's all specified out there.
Right. It's very
extra copies.
No, we do have it. Like I said, I just want to make sure we weren't missing anything. Okay. Were there any questions for the?
No, that was a pretty thorough requirement list that you gave us. Thank you for that.
Just, do you have any idea what other facilities might be available for something like that? You probably have a better idea of that than we would, certainly.
We could use a gymnasium at Blessed Sacrament, or you know, they would have good footing, good flooring, and lighting, and high ceiling. The problem with doing something like a school gymnasium would be limited access. The schools would have priority for their own programs, and storage may be an issue there, and electrical power may be an issue there. Would want to damage their gym floor by accident, you know, so there's some concerns with that.
Okay. Is there anything that has to be out the entire time that cannot be put away, or can everything be put away and stored until your class?
We put everything away here.
Okay.
In our storage cabinets, and we roll up the rubber mats and put them off to the side of the wall.
And the same with the fencing reels. That can be stored as well?
In one of our storage cabinets, sure.
Yeah, okay. Just in terms of thinking about space, right? All right, okay. Well, thank you. Yes, sir.
There's a once-a-week singing group with Deborah Rouse, that's the one they have her name emailed.
Deborah, say that name again?
Deborah Rouse, B-R-O-U-S-E.
I don't think so.
Deborah, D-E-B-O-R-A-H Browse, B-R-O-U-S-E, at gmail.com.
Singing, okay. All right, thank you. I saw another hand at some point. Someone down, another hand, okay. Well,
Are you going to talk about the different facilities that you found already? Or have you not looked into it at all?
so I think, like I said, really at this point, we're trying to get a sense of what people need, and I think we've really just started to grasp the various things that we need.
So, and yet you want us to do this all in a week?
I'm sorry, say
to find this, even though nothing has been sought after really. We haven't asked any church or school, as far as I know, to provide us with facilities. But you want us to do that within the next week?
No one is saying that.
Because I thought you said for the budget,
By the end of the year. End of the year.
there was something you said about next week. I didn't understand.
It starts, the budget
Starts.
process starts.
We don't have to have anything until the end of the year.
So how long do you imagine it will, you are allowing for us to go to various churches and ask questions?
Are you expecting us to do that?
Yeah.
No. Right now, I mean, look, you guys ought to explain what you're doing.
I think a couple things. I think, number one, we want to make sure we understand what's needed. And I think the survey has allowed us to do that. And really this, some of the questions we've been asking tonight have helped us understand a little bit more about what we need with regard to fencing and a few more names of people we need to contact. So that's really the first step. Because if we don't understand what is needed, then we're not going to understand where to look. After that, we would like to start reaching out to places, churches, schools, other community centers, potentially libraries and other spaces to see about what is needed. We may ask for your help in doing that, but it is not something that we expect the community to just go out and do. We also want to make sure that we're working with DPR because I would hope that some of these facilities that we're looking at are DPR facilities, or at least that we're not counting them out. And so I think that really is the next step that we're planning to take. Yeah.
This is a question you raised, why don't you do it? But in terms of, one of the things you might look at, there's a lot of constructions that are going on in the city last year, libraries and so forth. From my past experience, local government, sometimes public works projects come in, let's say, for 2 years. That's the projected time frame. They end up taking 2.6 to 2.8 years. This is a very, very difficult site. I would not be at all surprised if the reconstruction of this facility, all you wanted to take more than the projected time the General Services Administration is going to give you. So I guess one of the things I would do is go back to the General Services Administration, picking 7 or 8 recent facilities, such as, for example, the Cleveland Park Library, or the Tennessee Library, or other things like that. What was your projected time for doing it at the outset? And how much time did it actually take? Again, this is a very difficult site. Very busy in McKinley, Connecticut.
I'm an architect, so I know something about construction. So just to give you I just wrote a hypothetical timeline right here. The RFP for design is probably going to go out, let's say November 1. They're saying it's going to take a month. I think it's going to probably take a little more than a month. So let's say mid-December we'll award a design contract, maybe even January. The design period is going to be about 6 months. So you're not going to see a design until maybe July 1st next year. Then you have to bid for the construction period, get a construction contractor. That takes 6 weeks to 2 months. So we're talking maybe at the earliest September next year. So that gives you, a fair amount of time to get all this. Now, as far as construction timeline, you could do this in as little as a year, or it could take 1.5 years. So,
This one?
yeah, it's a little building, I'm telling you.
On a very difficult site.
It's not that difficult.
Sure.
No, I've done a lot bigger projects than this in a year. So, it's just, so let's say 1.5 years, because it's the DC. So we're talking September, so you're 2021, January 2021, maybe. I can't.
I think what Lee was saying is that if you ask for a certain amount of money for rent for the buildings that we need to go to, you don't want to just ask for the year that they probably will pay.
Well, there's one.
And furthermore, when you look at this facilities, sometimes you're gonna have to be cute, but you're gonna also have to be honest how much time you actually need. I guess what I'm saying is, with regards to the facilities that DC has constructed recently, pick half a dozen, pick 10. How long did they say it was gonna take? What was the original capital improvement, capital facility projection time, from the time they started construction, from the time it was completed? And is there a substantial overlap? And I guess what I'm saying, I think this site is gonna take, might be one of those things that, oh my God, it takes longer than you think.
Yeah, I think the point's well taken, and I think that their point is that we want to make sure we're building in some reasonable buffer, that we're not going to get stuck and run out and say, oops, we've got 6 months where this program is out of luck, right? We don't want to be in that situation, and I would agree 100%.
I'll just mention one thing too that Brent Cisco said at our last meeting, and that was that these kinds of contracts, and that's experience in the district, he says typically they will include a bonus for early completion and a penalty for late completion, so that penalty could also offset some of the costs if we take longer.
Yeah, let me just say that I've designed and built, constructed an embassy in Africa in 2 years, so that's got to be a lot more complicated than this place. I know the district, things can go round and round and things can get delayed, so, but, 18 months is a reasonable construction time for this place.
You are aware that the small renovation they did 20 years ago was supposed to be 6 months, and it was 18 months.
And Lafayette, which is a bigger project, got done within a year, so I think.
I mean, we have
all of their timelines that they have said, so.
Yeah, Lafayette was a year.
I think we're probably pretty
A lot more complicated than this place, so.
Well, and I think, generally speaking, just as we've done it in projects in the past, we're going to try and say, we're going to estimate that we need more rather than less, right? We don't want to get stuck with a gap. I think, Samantha, to your question, also, one thing I left out that I do want to say is, while we're not going to rely on everyone in this room to run out and find places, if you have suggestions, contacts, people we should be speaking with, we absolutely welcome those and want those. So please don't keep those to yourself.
Do you want them tonight, or do you want us to email you?
I think honestly an email would be better, just because we have it all and we're able to compile it all in one place. But that would be helpful.
Much like Chris's timeline that he just gave you for design, bids, construction and all, we sort of have a timeline ourselves for this process. And we could pretty much say by the end of November we'll have completed the needs assessment. And that's getting information from all the programs. By the end of December, the information from that needs assessment will help us define the requirements that we need overall for the programs and individual programs. By the end of January, we would be able to identify all possible locations that we think could meet those needs. And that's not something that just takes place in January, but that takes place concurrently with these other activities. So that could be going on starting now. And then in February through April, hopefully is when we are contacting and negotiating the ability to move into spaces by Chris's timeline of September 2019 when construction starts. So that's general timeline. Things go wrong sometimes, but I think we've built in enough back-end time that we'll be able to meet those.
I was just thinking, when we had our Chevy Chase listserv big party, we used the Chevy Chase, I don't know what it's called, the community room.
In Maryland, you're talking about.
The what?
You're talking about Maryland.
Maryland, yeah, I'm talking about Maryland. Just right over the line where the police, Chevy Chase Village Police, they have several large rooms there that can be rented, but if there is a member in the group, then it's free. So if there's a senior who's using the senior program and they want to use that room, that person can sponsor the event and then there's no fee. But if, so
The senior program only got, well, most of the classes, the ones run by the line, only go to DC residents, right?
Yep.
I think that is a nice space and worth looking at, though. I recently went to a wedding reception there. It was very nice.
Yeah,
It's a nice
great
space.
I mean, we've had several parties there.
Yep.
But for
Definitely
bridge and Scrabble and other groups like that, I mean, in my bridge group, I have Maryland people and I have DC people both. So it's possible that.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. There are other facilities like that as well, that give breaks to residents in different areas, yes.
I have a general question. I don't know that, I wasn't at the last meeting that was there, but do we have any kind of precedent of the district government supporting replacement facilities or other community centers or buildings that have been shut down for a few years like this? And I can tell you that I had just the misfortune to be here. It was exactly 20 years ago that this building ended up being shut down for a year and a half. And I can only speak for the Scrabble group. I don't know about all the other groups. Well, at that time, there was no effort like this, and we were all completely on our own. But in our case, I won't give you the whole story. We had to beg the library here to let us use their facility, but they wouldn't bend at all. They have their own hours and rules. They basically were uncooperative. I mean, they said, well, if you want to be here on our hours and our rules, maybe you could do it. I would like to think that the district government would be more cooperative, because as we know, there are a bunch of district buildings around here. The library, Lafayette School, the to-be-constructed Lafayette Park Rec Center, and a bunch of others we all know about. I would like to think that we could help get the district government to be more cooperative in this situation and not be uncooperative like the library was 20 years ago. I hope you're going to say things have changed, or we hope things have changed, but have they?
Well, I think a couple things. I think the first thing I would say is that I think the process we engaged in around the funding request for the community center, I don't want to say that has never been done, but I think that was a pretty extraordinary process. We were able to get a significantly larger amount of money allocated or budgeted than we had before. And so, while again, I do want to be realistic about what we can do, and I'm honestly not 100% sure what we can do, I do think that is an instructive example. And I hope that we can do something like that. That's the first thing. That may have been unprecedented, but it was done. In terms of what has been the process in the past for things like this, I think we want to avoid the situation you're talking about, which is why we're starting this now for construction that won't happen for at least another year, if not longer. And I think thirdly, in terms of whether this was done before, as someone on the younger end of the spectrum in the room, I would probably yield to everyone else to say whether it has been done successfully, but we intend to.
Yeah, I really don't care whether it's been done previously. We're going to make it happen this time. I mean, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and we're going to be the squeaky wheel. So we're going to continue to push the district government on this. We're not going to let them say, we've never done this before. We're going to fix it. And if you're not optimistic about doing that, we shouldn't start this process. I mean, we've got to be positive in looking at it. And I think really that, and again, as Abe said, the experience we had in getting the $19 million to build the building was very positive, I thought. And so now if we can just keep that momentum up and keep the pressure on DPR, talk to our council members, and get their help as well, we can make it happen. And it's important enough that we need to make it happen.
I agree with all that.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
I don't have a dog in the game, I'm observing a little bit, but it seemed like your question presented an opportunity to, one would be if you have an example of another community center that's closed for a year or two. For example, you're under pressure for budget, it looks like. You could maybe use it as metrics, maybe they submitted budgets to new programs where you can utilize maybe so you'll have a great idea of all the activities in the building and the schedule of things. So you'll be double checking the list of activities and making sure that nothing falls between the cracks in terms of the commitments of programs where they need to move to. I just want to make sure you got a kind of master schedule, you can look at things and make sure nothing falls between the cracks.
From past experiences, there have been, within the last 20 years, where they have worked with the community and ANC to house different programs. The number one thing is to find a space or spaces, in this case, because we have a lot of programs here, that we can house those different programs in. The school system in the past has always worked with DPR reference to that. I'm not sure too much about the library, how, like you said, the hours different from hours. The school system kind of mirrors it just a little bit. They close, in the case of this community center, they may close definitely maybe an hour or 2 hours before, maybe 8 or 9 instead of 10 for sure. But what's different also with the programs that we have here, we have a lot of the morning programs. So that, of course, moves the school into, not being able to use the school or a school that's already functioning. But as long as you guys have your plan and everything in order and say, can you work with us, or give them a plan that you would like to have these programs going on, I'm pretty sure that they'll work with you within the area to have those things going on. Also, another way is maybe moving some of the programs to different rec centers around the area. I'm not sure how you want to travel. You can travel to them, or if that's the best option, but those are options as well.
Right, and we do ask that question as to how far people can travel for these programs from the current location. That's one of the questions on the survey. But back to what you asked, Ted, that's one of the reasons we're trying to do this comprehensive, unified approach so that everybody isn't stuck trying to do a one-off and fending for themselves by being able to do this in this more systematic way. Then we have, as Randy said, we have strength with our approach, and we'll be able to make a better presentation to hopefully get what we need for the community.
Yes.
I appreciated you laying out the schedule for the process to find alternative locations and accommodate programs that are here now. My question is, who is ultimately responsible for doing that? I sense a little confusing. The teachers at the current program are responsible? Are people here responsible? Are you, the ANC members, responsible? Is the Department of Recreation responsible? Who will be ultimately responsible for doing the negotiation and finding those locations and locking them in?
I can say that we've taken the lead in getting all the information together. We're not going to be able to negotiate contracts because that's not what we do. I would imagine DPR or DGS negotiates the contracts on our behalf once we present the information that's necessary.
Do you see your job being to identify the requirements and the needs of the programs and then turning it over to DPR to ultimately find the alternative resources and locations?
Yes, with the help of the community, absolutely.
I would say I would maybe go one step further, is I think we do intend to do work around finding locations. And if those locations say, well, in order to house, say, the fencing program or the ballet program here, we're going to charge you X amount of rent, we would want to be saying to DPR, to the mayor, this needs to be included in the budget for reconstruction of this facility. And so I think that is a piece that I would say probably hasn't been done by an ANC, or at least not recently, and that's something that we're trying to do. So.
Ultimately, the person responsible to DPR. They're going to have to make these decisions ultimately. But the more we can do to help them and assist them in that process, if we can give them alternative spaces, maybe we'll have 2 or 3 options and say, here's what we think is best, but here's some other alternatives as well. the more we can do in this process and contribute to that, we want to work hand in hand with DPR. And the more the community can provide information to DPR and assist DPR, the more likely we are to get what we need.
Do we have a commitment from DPR that they will actually go out and find, or help find places and do this?
We don't have a commitment, but like I said, we're going to work to make sure that it happens. We're going to do our very best. And we don't have a commitment from DPR yet on anything that we're doing here. They haven't bought into the schedule completely or anything, but we're trying to right now give them a framework and we say this is what we think we need. And then we'll work with them, we'll work with the council members, we'll work with the mayor's office to see that the community's needs are met. Ultimately, that's what we're focusing on. What are the community's needs? How can we meet them? And then we see our job, I think, as ANCs, just to be the facilitators to see if we can make that happen.
Didn't we have the gentleman who came at the last meeting give us, say to us that they would do everything they could to help us find locations and to make sure that we have places for the programs while the building was under construction? I thought we had that promise.
Well, Brett did say that they had a person at DPR who does that kind of thing and that could help us with it. I don't know whether it was to the level of a commitment, but it was certainly an indication that DPR is going to work with us on this. And we expect that, and I'm sure they will.
Yeah, I think it would make it easy for DPR and make it an easy process and a pleasurable process and an informed process that you can't help but move it forward. I think you run into trouble where you just say to DPR, you do it all yourself, and then it's not as easy. So I think the idea is we're going to try to make it easy for the staff.
Just another comment. It sounds like you need a program manager in charge of it for working issues and kind of connect the dots between the activities of area multifaceted effort like this, or things are going to fall between the cracks. Way over here, something way over there, and that confusion. So, do you know what a program manager is?
Yeah, well, DPR has a design manager. We already met him, and he was that landscape architect who's now a program manager. He seemed to be an easy person to work with. Hopefully, he'll stay with the project all the way through.
Is he going to have a master schedule, or is it just?
Yeah, we'll hope so. I mean, if you're a project manager, you don't have a schedule for project, you're in trouble. So I think, I think these guys, I think DPR is a very organized organization. They do this a lot. Do I have their initials right? Yeah, okay. Let's just say the DC government is very good at doing this. And the more guidance you give them and the more oversight you have over them, then the better the outcome should be. There are always bumps in the road. We don't know what they're going to be yet.
And we're also just trying to help him focus his attention a little bit on the programming aspect. But like Randy said, we're trying to be the squeaky wheel here that gets the grease and gets DPR to do what we need them to do.
You're standing in front of the camera, that's what he's trying to tell you.
Oh. So sorry.
I'm going to partially answer my own question and make a suggestion that I think we're all familiar. I don't know the details, that recently when Birch School closed for 2 years, they were able to move the entire thing, I think, to UDC. Now, we don't have that easy a situation, but we might, I don't have no idea how that works financially. That would be a very nice solution if we had such a thing, but we might use that as a precedent or look into how that happened. That's the one that occurs to me that is most similar to what we're going through.
Other comments?
Well, I guess, let me just say, I think the reason that you're at where you're at right now is because you were gun shy about being political. 1,000 questionnaires means a lot to elected politicians and people higher up in any administration. So don't forget the beans. I think this is obvious to most of you up there, but I just say it. I think that's the most important. That's the thing that we need to see.
Any other questions? Yes?
One thing that I think would be very nice for the new building would be to have solar panel roof. And I can imagine that someone plans that, and then someone else says, well, we're going to use the booth for outdoor activities. And now it's time. I think this kind of, we have to have some communication between the buildings, the builders, and the users to get those kinds of questions settled.
So, your name is Michael, am I remembering that correctly?
Sorry?
You're Michael Ermolinsky? Yeah. So I think, as Chris mentioned, the design process hasn't really begun formally yet, and I think when it does, that's a good suggestion. I think you should definitely make sure that Brent and other folks from DPR and DGS here, there will be meetings about the design process, probably not this calendar year, but in the early part of next calendar year, I expect.
To say something about the design process. The design process typically goes through a number of stages, and at the end of each stage there's a review period, and the reason you do that is you don't want to go too far down the line of the design without solving all the problems, because if you forget to do something and you start building the building, it gets very expensive. So what I'm trying to say is there'll be many chances to review the design as it develops, and I imagine the community will have a chance to look at the design and say, hey, where's my the fencing room's too small. I need 60 feet. You only have 50 feet. I mean, this is the kind of thing that gets done during the process. So since the ANC's engaged and we had the community engaged, I think we have a good chance of getting most of what we desire in the building. On your other point, this will be a green building. The DC government is committed to green buildings. I think they want gold LEED now. So this will be designed to a high energy standard. So I don't think we have to worry about that item.
One more thing to piggyback on what Chris said. The recommendations that the report that we came out with this past January was a very in-depth, as you know, report. We had a lot of recommendations in there. And what we're collecting now through this needs assessment, which will help us define the requirements, will help inform some of those specifics that we didn't address in those recommendations, because we didn't ask people about how many feet they need for fencing or how many tables they needed for bridge or things like that. So I'm not saying that this is going to replace that kind of work that will be done in the design process, but this will help inform that to make it a little bit easier as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. I'm Lynn Welton from the Valley Program. I apologize for being late to the meeting. One of our parents got classes on at 7:30 instead of 7, so we were babysitting. I was able to open the website and get input from the Valley Program, but if you need any additional information, we are available and welcome to work with or modify whatever can be available for us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. We do have your survey. It seems like the classes are typically in the evening, 5 to 7, except on the weekend. And I just said, what is a sprung floor? Tell me about a sprung floor real quick, if you don't mind.
The construction now that they have is a sprung floor. It's based on risers before you lay the wood, so that when jumps happen, the floor gives, and it prevents injuries. I don't know if basketball courts have it, but some do. But I do know that professional dance
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. If there aren't further questions, I think we'd like to leave it there, with our next steps being to reach out to a few other programs and a few other contacts to make sure we have a fuller list, to that is continue with the needs assessment, and to also begin reaching out to some organizations, community centers, and other locations to see about possible rentals or borrowing space in the future. If there's someone you know that should be filling out this survey that has not, or that should be speaking with us that has not, please direct them to contact us, because we do want to make sure we're getting as comprehensive an understanding as possible. Yeah.
At this point, you want to know what particular group of people, let's say, are in fit and wellness, what they're willing to, how far they're willing to travel, and so on. You can't do it by asking one person.
Sure.
And it would require a very large survey, and I don't see any indication. I'm afraid you asked a question about how far people are willing to travel. I gave my answer, but it doesn't apply to 50 other people who are also in the class.
Sure.
I don't know what you're going to do about it.
Sure. I think one thing I would say about that is, for all programs, we're going to prioritize spaces that are close. They're close to here, they're easily accessible, and that's just, I think, something that's just going to be the case for all programs. I think what we were trying to gather is just a general sense, some estimation of what that would be, but at the end of the day, we're not trying to have anyone go across town for the same program. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. We're here if you have further individual questions.
Thank you.